Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, we're going to be looking at another new card from Sun and Moon 6. Over in Japan, Pokemon is revealing these cards at quite a fast clip. And that is good, because it means we get lots of new cards to talk about. Today, it is the turn of Pangoro, Stage 1 Darkness Pokemon. And let's start there. Being a Darkness Pokemon, you're not really hitting very much for weakness. Maybe Dawnwing's Necrozma sees a bit of play as a tech, in which case you're looking pretty good there. Other than that, you're really not hitting much for weakness. Sorry about that one. 130 HP is pretty gosh darn good, although it's kind of on the higher end for a stage 1, it's not phenomenal. I should also mention that being a Darkness Pokemon means you have the choice of either using Devoured Field or Reverse Valley, so that your attacks do 10 more damage to the active, which could be relevant, could help you to hit some numbers here or there. Of course, being weak to fighting is very bad indeed. Zoroark is everywhere at the moment, it is absolutely ruling the format, and it is weak to fighting. Which means a whole bunch of people are playing a whole bunch of fighting Pokemon, like something like Buzzwole for instance, just to counter Zoroark. And if they're playing these fighting Pokemon to counter Zoroark, they will end up countering Pangoro as well. That, ladies and gentlemen, is far from ideal. Retreat cost of 3 is very heavy, but at least until the rotation, you do get the option of using Heavy Ball to search it out, so it could be a little bit worse. And resistance to Psychic is always good. Garbodor looks like it might be making a little bit of a comeback. It means you have to have one more item in your discard in order to be KO'd by Garbodor, so yeah. Resistance isn't the best thing ever, it's not going to win you millions of games, but it is, I like to say, a handy bonus. So starting off then with the first attack, 1 dark, 1 colourless, 50 damage, but if Pangoro has any damage counters on it, it does 100 damage, and both Pangoro and your opponent's active Pokemon are now confused. As I always mention when we've got these non-GX Pokemon, do remember that you could use counter energy here in order to pay the attack cost of this in one go. And maybe this could be a good use because, of course, 100 damage is fine. But if you're hitting for weakness, it becomes 200 damage. There's Dawnwing's Necrozma gone. And if you had a choice band on there, you're then hitting 260. Any Darkness weak Pokemon that comes along, no matter how beefy, is going to have 250 or less HP. Because that's where we are in the game at the moment. Which means that if you need a Stage 1 or Basic Darkness Pokemon to use Counter Energy to KO Darkness weak Pokemon, great news, Pangoro could be the one. So if you're using Counter Energy, and if you're hitting for weakness, we're absolutely golden. Now let's assume you're not. What other options do we have here? I mean, Rainbow Energy jumps to mind. Rainbow Energy, when you attach it, you put 10 damage onto Pangoro. And of course, the attack cost is 1 darkness, 1 colourless. So Rainbow would count as a Darkness Energy while damaging it, so you do the extra damage. And then you just add in any extra energy. So this could be teched into any deck whatsoever, as long as you're playing a couple of Rainbow Energy, and Rainbow Energy would literally do both the things that you want it to do. That, ladies and gentlemen, pretty gosh darn nice. Now, in terms of the damage here, 100 damage plus confusion, it's alright. The problem is, you really want to be doing, say, 130 to knock out non-GXs. Something like Greninja would be a classic example of this. And then maybe hitting up to something like 170 so that you could take out a Tapu Lele. And you're hitting 100. Now, you could always use Professor Kukui here, and there's a very good reason for this. If you use Professor Kukui, you go up to 120. Then, of course, if you use Reverse Valley or Devoured Field, they both essentially do the same thing here, you're then going up to 130, and you are getting a one-hit KO on these Pokemon. But it's not really a huge amount of damage, especially when you're having to rely on stuff like Professor Kukui and Devoured Field. The one thing I will say here, of course, confusion. If you confuse your opponent's active Pokemon, then if they try and use an attack, they flip a coin. Heads, the attack works, tails, the attack fails, and they take 30 damage instead, and then it becomes your turn. In a pre-release, This is amazing because special conditions in a pre-release are absolutely nuts. In standard format, it's not great. Now, we aren't seeing many people avoiding special conditions at the moment. As an example, fairy decks would be able to play comfy to get around it, but they're not. So maybe if you can get this working, you can take advantage of people not planning for special conditions. But to be perfectly honest, ladies and gentlemen, it's a nice annoyance, but it needs to be on a better attack. On a basic, yes. For a single energy, yes. On a stage 1, for 2 energy, the confusion becomes a nice bonus, but not a reason to actually play the card. And unfortunately here, it really does seem like it's just not quite good enough. As I say, if you're using this to counter Darkness Weak Pokemon, either with Counter Energy or with Rainbow Energy, then I'm a big fan of this attack and I think it could work. Otherwise, it just seems a bit too expensive. Second attack, 2 Darkness, 1 Colorless Energy, 80 damage. Flip 2 coins. This attack does 40 more for each heads that you can flip. First thing to note about this, it's 2 Darkness, 1 Colorless Energy, so you cannot play double Colorless to lower the attack cost. You can play Counter Energy here, but anytime you have to rely on playing Counter Energy and another energy at the same time, it just looks a little bit too expensive. Now, in Darkness decks, you can use this. I haven't mentioned Evil Tau yet. That can, of course, accelerate energy with Oblivion Wing, but even then, it just seems like it's a little bit too clunky and a little bit too slow. Now, in terms of damage, we're actually looking pretty good if you can flip lots of heads. And I suppose, as I always do here, it's a flippy attack. I should mention the Victini from Guardians Rising that allows you to reflip. So if you don't flip the heads that you were looking for, you can use Victini. You've only got a 1 in 4 chance of hitting double heads, so at least if you play Victini, you've then got a slightly higher chance because you get to flip twice. And if you flip double heads, you're looking good. You do 170, so you add a Reverse Valley or a Devoured Field, and that's a 1-hit KO on a Tapu Lele, which is nice. You add a Choice Band, you're doing 190, there's a 1-hit KO on Buzzwole, who is going to be one of the biggest threats to this particular Pokemon. That's nice. It does do a lot of damage, and if you can be doing 160 on a non-GX Pokemon that only gives up 1 prize, you're going to be sitting there and life is going to be good. Here's the big problem. It's for free energy on a stage 1 Pokemon. It's too expensive. And you've got to hit a double heads on a coin flip, which is too unlikely. You can hit the good numbers here, but you've got to evolve up into a stage 1, attach free energy, not including double colorless, then you've got to have a Devoured Field in play to get Tapu Lele, or a Choice Band in play to get a Buzzwole, and I just look at this and think, really? It just doesn't seem that doable. Now, the good news is we've also got a Pancham coming. The bad news is it's utter garbage. 70 HP is good because when you've got stuff running around like the promo Tapu Lele spreading 20 damage per turn, like Buzzwole spreading 30 damage per turn, and like, for instance, if it makes a comeback, Decidueye GX using Feather Arrow to put 20 damage down per turn, then there becomes a huge difference between 60 and 70. But honestly, ladies and gentlemen, 10 damage for a fighting energy is underwhelming. If it's got any darkness energy attached to it, it does 40 damage. 40 damage on a basic is pretty good, especially when you're only really planning to evolve it. For 2 energy is not particularly good. For 2 different types of energy, oh my goodness, no. Fun fact, counter energy will mean that Pancham does do 40 damage, which means you will be hitting for your fighting weakness, because the counter energy essentially acts as a darkness and a fighting. But oh my goodness, no. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this just does not seem particularly like a Pokemon, which is destined to be a wonderful, brilliant, awesome, game-changing, game-breaking Pokemon, and I'm going to be forced to give it a measly 2 Wassies. Don't give out 2 Wassies very often. This just doesn't seem worth it. In a pre-release, I really like this card. If you're playing only in Ultra Prism, this is quite nice because you'll have time to get the energy on and you get the confusion. In that respect, it's pretty good, but outside of that, ladies and gentlemen, it is not something I can wholeheartedly endorse. And I apologize for that. Too expensive, have to evolve it, relies on coin flips. Hey-ho. But if you do want to tell me you're wrong and tell me how great Pangoro is, and I've got great news for you, ladies and gentlemen, there is a comment section right down below, and I would heartily suggest you pop your thoughts and feelings about this card down there. It'll be fun. Go nuts. But be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wussy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and so on, you can do so by going to patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.